In a small, dusty town nestled under an unforgiving sun, life was tough. The earth was cracked and dry, with not a single drop of rain to refresh the parched soil. Men and women strained their eyes at the horizon, hoping for clouds that never came. The only source of water was a deep well located at the town's center. It stood tall and sturdy, but the rope to pull up buckets was frayed and worn from years of use. As the drought dragged on, the well became a symbol of desperation. Each day, people lined up to collect water, clutching empty containers with anxious hands. Their faces were drawn tight with worry, knowing that each drop they took was one less for their neighbors. Whispers filled the air about who deserved access to that precious water and who didn't. The outcast, a man shunned by society, had become an easy target. Nearby lived a salt prospector who had grown accustomed to the struggles of his fellow townsfolk. He often watched the outcast from a distance, sensing a bond forming between them amidst the despair. As the sun dipped low in the sky each evening, he pondered how to help not only his friend but also his entire community in their time of need. Little did he know that soon, fate would force them to confront their fears together. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the town, two figures stood apart from the rest. The salt prospector, named Eli, was a rugged man in his 30s with sun-kissed skin and a determined glint in his eyes. He had spent years digging for salt in the nearby hills, earning a meager living. Despite his tough exterior, Eli had a kind heart and often looked out for those less fortunate. His experiences had made him resilient, and he understood the value of friendship in hard times. On the other side of the square stood the outcast, known as Jonah. He was thin with unkempt hair and weary eyes that held stories of pain and rejection. Once part of the community, Jonah had fallen from grace due to a past mistake. Now, he was seen as a burden rather than a neighbor. He often watched the townsfolk from afar, longing for connection but fearing their disdain. Though their lives seemed worlds apart, Eli felt drawn to Jonah's quiet strength and shared sense of loss. In this arid town where hope was dwindling, an unlikely friendship began to blossom between them, a bond that would soon reveal its importance as they faced greater challenges ahead. The well in the center of town was more than just a source of water, it was a lifeline. Its ancient stones were worn and smooth, telling stories of countless hands that had pulled up the precious liquid over the years. As the drought tightened its grip, the well loomed larger in the townspeople's minds, becoming a symbol of both hope and despair. Each day, families would gather around it, their voices hushed as they waited their turn to fill their buckets. Eli often watched as people approached the well with expressions of worry etched on their faces. The anxious murmurs among them grew louder as water levels dwindled. Who deserved to draw from the well? Who would be blamed if they ran out completely? Tensions flared as neighbors eyed one another with suspicion, sparking arguments about fairness and equality. Jonah, standing on the outskirts, felt the weight of that tension even more. He hesitated to approach, knowing he was seen as an outcast. Yet, he could not ignore his thirst or the desperation in others' eyes. As Eli began sharing small amounts of water with Jonah when no one was watching, they both understood that this well was about more than survival. It represented their chance for unity in a fractured community facing an uncertain future. As the days turned into weeks, the drought deepened, turning the once vibrant town into a shadow of its former self. The sun blazed hotter in the sky, and the cracked earth seemed to sigh under its relentless heat. With each passing day, fewer families approached the well, their containers growing lighter as hopes of filling them faded. Whispers of desperation filled the air as arguments erupted over dwindling supplies, and the community's spirit began to fray. Eli noticed how weariness weighed heavily on everyone's shoulders. The townspeople exchanged wary glances, their fears spilling over into resentment. Each drop of water became a valuable currency, leading many to question who was deserving. Jonah felt the tension more acutely. He was not just an outcast but also a convenient scapegoat for their troubles. In secret, Eli continued to share what little water he could spare with Jonah. They would meet at twilight, away from prying eyes, where they could find solace in each other's company. As they sat together under the dimming light, Eli spoke of better days that once were and dreams of rain that might come again. Yet deep inside, both men knew that time was running out. It was becoming clear that if they did not unite the townspeople soon, their home might wither away entirely. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Eli filled a small bucket with what he had saved for himself. He hesitated for a moment, staring down at the water shimmering in the fading light. Although he needed it to survive, he couldn't ignore Jonah's thirst, which seemed to pull at his heartstrings. With a deep breath, Eli made his way to their secret meeting spot. Jonah sat on an old, weathered log, shoulders slumped and eyes cast down. When Eli approached with the bucket, Jonah's gaze lifted in surprise. "You didn't have to do that," Jonah said softly, already knowing that the town's scarcity was weighing heavily on Eli too. "I know," Eli replied with a gentle smile. "But you shouldn't have to suffer alone." They shared the water between them, each sip a reminder of their bond growing stronger during such hardships. As they drank, they exchanged stories and laughter, each moment providing a brief escape from reality. Eli's kindness wasn't just about sharing water, it was about giving Jonah hope and friendship in a time of despair. In this simple act, Eli demonstrated that even in the harshest conditions, compassion could sow seeds of unity. As night fell around them, they felt a flicker of hope, maybe together they could inspire others to come together too. As the drought continued to ravage the town, tension reached a boiling point. The town guard, feeling the pressure from frightened residents, convened to discuss the worsening situation. Voices echoed in the small meeting hall as townspeople expressed their anger and fear over dwindling water supplies. Some blamed Jonah for their misfortunes, believing his past had angered the spirits of the land. In a fit of misguided anger, the guards decided they needed to take action. Determined to control the chaos, the guards made a fateful decision: they would cut the rope to the well, believing that restricting access would force everyone to consider who was truly deserving of water. They thought this would shield Jonah from blame and help restore order, overlooking the reality that it would only create more desperation among the townsfolk. When Eli learned of their plan, his heart sank. He rushed to find Jonah and share what he had heard. "They can't take away our water," Eli exclaimed, frustrated by their lack of understanding. "We need that well together." Knowing how dire the situation had become, Eli felt a sense of urgency. They both realized they had to rally support from others and confront the guards, standing against the injustice that threatened not just Jonah but everyone in their struggling community. The news of the town guard's decision spread like wildfire through the community, igniting a mix of outrage and fear. As people gathered in small groups, voices rose in heated discussions. Some residents supported the guards, convinced that cutting off access to the well would restore order and help determine who was deserving of water. Others were appalled by this solution, realizing it only deepened the crisis. Eli stood at the heart of these gatherings, trying to explain his perspective. "We need to work together, not turn on one another," he urged. Many nodded in agreement, feeling the weight of their shared struggle. Jonah watched from the sidelines, anxiety gripping him as he heard whispers blaming him for their suffering. The tension in the air was palpable, he felt like an outsider even among those who were suffering alongside him. As Eli rallied support, more townsfolk began to speak up against the guard's decision. They recognized that punishing Jonah would not solve their problems. Instead, they needed to unite as a community to confront both the drought and their fears head-on. Slowly but surely, a sense of determination emerged among them, a collective resolve to stand together for justice and compassion instead of allowing fear to tear them apart. The glimmer of hope grew stronger as they prepared for what lay ahead. The day of the confrontation arrived, and a palpable tension hung in the air as Eli, Jonah, and a growing crowd of townspeople gathered near the well. The sun beat down mercilessly, mirroring the heat of their emotions. Eli stood at the front, his heart pounding as he glanced at the faces of his neighbors, some anxious, others determined. Together, they were ready to stand up against the guard's unjust decision. As the town guard approached, led by the stern Captain Rook, an uneasy silence descended. The captain cleared his throat, ready to defend their actions. "We are protecting this community from chaos," he declared, his voice carrying authority. "This well was intended for those worthy of it, and we cannot allow just anyone to draw water." Eli stepped forward. "This isn't about worthiness," he replied, his voice steady. "It's about survival for all of us, including Jonah. Blaming him won't save us from this drought." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd as they rallied behind Eli. Captain Rook's face hardened. "You're just stirring trouble," he shot back, but he could see the growing strength in the townsfolk's resolve. They were no longer willing to accept division, instead, they were united in their quest for fairness. A single voice ignited a collective courage that could not be silenced, a true turning point in their struggle against both nature and prejudice. After the confrontation with the guards, Eli and Jonah realized that mere words would not solve their dire situation. They needed a plan to restore water to the town. Gathering a small group of supporters later that evening, they met in hushed tones at Eli's modest home. The flickering candlelight illuminated anxious faces, each mirroring the weight of desperation they felt. "We can't rely on the well alone," Eli suggested, his brow furrowed. "There must be other sources, maybe we can dig for underground streams nearby." The townspeople listened intently, inspired by Eli's determination. Jonah jumped in, offering his own idea. "I know where some old irrigation pipes are buried near the hills. If we uncover them, we might redirect water from there into our well." Excitement surged through the group as they considered this possibility. With renewed hope lighting their eyes, the townsfolk began strategizing how to work together. They formed teams, some would gather tools, while others would scout out the areas Jonah mentioned. Plans took shape amidst passionate discussions, and for the first time in weeks, laughter echoed in the room. As night fell outside, their spirits soared with conviction. Each person understood that restoring water wasn't just about survival, it was about coming together as a community that cared for one another. With determination fueling their souls, they were ready to take action and confront both nature and their past grievances head-on. After days of hard work, Eli, Jonah, and the townspeople finally uncovered the old irrigation pipes hidden beneath the earth. With a collective effort, they redirected water into the well, and soon, the first trickles of fresh water began to flow. Cheers erupted among the group as they watched life return to their community in small but significant ways. The well, once a symbol of despair, now sparkled with hope as it filled. In the following days, the townspeople came together like never before. They shared not just water but stories, laughter, and a renewed sense of purpose. Jonah was no longer seen as an outcast, instead, he became a vital part of their effort. Eli watched with a sense of pride as they all worked side by side, realizing that their struggles had forged stronger bonds among them. As the drought continued to challenge them, resilience replaced fear and anger. They understood that survival depended on working together rather than blaming one another for their circumstances. The community learned valuable lessons about compassion and unity in adversity. In quiet moments under the stars, Eli and Jonah reflected on how far they had come. Their friendship had proven to be a beacon of hope in dark times. They knew that while challenges would always arise, they could face anything together as long as they stood united in spirit and action. The journey through drought, tension, and eventual resolution taught the townspeople invaluable lessons about compassion, unity, and resilience. In a world where fear often drove them apart, they learned that working together could overcome even the harshest challenges. Eli and Jonah's friendship blossomed in the soil of shared hardships, proving that kindness can forge unexpected bonds between those deemed different by society. As the community came together to restore their vital water supply, they realized that survival was not simply an individual effort but a collective responsibility. The act of sharing water evolved into something more profound. It became a symbol of solidarity amidst adversity. Each person discovered that by lifting one another up instead of pointing fingers, they cultivated hope for all. The town marked a turning point in its history, a recognition that unity is stronger than division. They understood that while circumstances might change, their relationships would shape the fabric of their lives. The well no longer stood solely as a source of water, it now represented their triumph against hardship and the power of community spirit. In quiet moments, Eli and Jonah reflected on how far they had come and acknowledged that facing life's storms together was essential. As they looked toward the future, they knew that compassion and understanding would always be the keys to sustaining hope and resilience in their hearts, no matter the trials ahead.